You're listening to How to Drink Less, and I'm your host, Adriana Cloud. Whether your goal is to cut back, take a break, or say goodbye to alcohol for good, this podcast will help you stop drinking on autopilot, learn how to manage cravings, and feel fully in control around alcohol. It's easier than you think. Listen on to find out how. Hey everyone! Valentine's Day is coming up. So today we're talking about alcohol and dating and how to date when you're sober or sober curious. For this episode, I'm going to focus on early dating and the questions and concerns that come up for people who are on the dating apps, going on first or second dates, or just in the early stages of dating when you're first getting to know someone. But if that's not your situation, please don't give up on this episode, because even if your specific situation is different from someone else's, I promise you that our drinking brains have a lot in common with each other. So you're still going to learn things that apply to you, I promise. So the first two questions that come up is one, will you date people who are drinking? And two, will you tell people that you yourself are not drinking or you're sober or whatever your situation is? A lot of dating apps now give you the option to indicate how much you drink or whether you drink at all. So that's the first decision point. What do you say? When do you say it? Do you put it in the app if you're sober? Or do you not add that detail to your profile at all and wait until this comes up later on? And there are pros and cons either way. One of the pros of being upfront is that nobody is surprised if you are upfront about it. And if drinking or not drinking was going to be a deal breaker for the other person, even if it's not a deal breaker for you if they drink, it's better to find that out early on, maybe before you even meet in real life, rather than sitting across from someone on a date and feeling awkward or pressured when you suddenly realize that you have very different views on drinking. I've already talked elsewhere about what specifically to say to people about your drinking or not drinking. So I won't repeat myself too much here. If you want more on that, you can check out episode 42, How to Tell Other People You're Not Drinking. And on the flip side, you're not obligated to share everything about yourself immediately or ever, especially with someone you've just matched with. There's no single right way to handle this. But what matters is choosing what feels most aligned and least stressful for you. And what I'm going to suggest is this. Assume that if you are to go on a date with this person, the question of drinking will come up at some point, whether you bring it up before you actually meet in real life or not. Alcohol is so ingrained in our culture that you're really unlikely to be able to avoid it. So, in my view, it's only a matter of time. And another pro of telling your date that you're not currently drinking, or whatever you decide to tell them, is that you get to enlist their help planning the date. You don't have to share your whole story or explain yourself in detail, but you can say something that brings them on board. One surprisingly disarming thing you can say is, I want to be fully present for this date and actually remember it. That's a huge compliment, and hopefully your date will see it as such. But more importantly, when you voice your needs and wants, and you enlist the other person's help in meeting those needs, it creates closeness. It reinforces that you two are on the same team, and you both want to enjoy yourselves, and you hopefully want the other person to enjoy themselves too. And with your date on board, with your goals and desires, you then get to think about what the date could look like. Because, as you might have already discovered, for most people nowadays, in the Western world at least, dating and drinking go hand in hand. When someone says, let's go on a date, the default image for many of us is an evening at a bar with alcoholic drinks. But it doesn't have to be this way. At least some of those components, and actually all of them, are optional. Now, of course, you could go on a date in a bar in the evening, but you could choose a non-alcoholic drink. Shocking, I know. But that option is available to you. And thankfully, now more and more places are getting the memo that people want alcohol-free options. So you're likely to have choices beyond just soda and orange juice. However, I'm going to advise that you do this only if you are comfortable enough in your own sobriety and you trust yourself around alcohol. If you still feel shaky and you think you might be tempted, I would recommend that you don't test yourself. There's no point putting yourself in a situation where you might make a decision you later regret. Yes, of course, in the long term, we want to get you to a point where you don't have to hide from alcohol. That's coming, I promise you. I currently have brandy in my house, but it doesn't even occur to me that I could drink it. I trust myself completely, and I have no problem going to a pub and spending time with people who are drinking. But if you're not there yet, if you don't feel grounded enough, don't go to a bar and then spend the evening just gritting your teeth and being worried and not be able to relax or to be present. It's just not worth it. You don't have anything to prove to anyone. The other thing to consider is what time of day to meet for your date, because daytime dates make not drinking feel more normal. During the day, we somehow find it more acceptable if someone chooses not to drink. So, if you're trying to make your life a little easier, perhaps try to arrange your dates during the day. And then you can think about planning a date that has nothing to do with drinking anything. You can plan the date around an activity. You can go for a walk. You can go to the farmer's market. You can go to one of those pottery places where you can make your own mug. You can go and grab some food, but at a place that doesn't center alcohol. You could get ice cream. You can go to the park, and if you have a body of water, you can feed the birds around it. You can go to a zoo. You could just sit on a bench and watch the sky. There are so many things you can do that have nothing to do with alcohol. And I want you to think about some boundaries you may want to set. You could communicate them to your date ahead of time if you want to, but at the very least, I want you to consider these things for yourself. Are you okay if your date drinks? And if so, is there a limit to how much they can drink before you feel uncomfortable? If they do end up drinking more than you want them to, and if they become visibly inebriated, what will you do? How will you honor your own peace and comfort? And how will you have your own back? At what point might you consider leaving? And what might you say to them at that point? None of this is about controlling someone else's behavior. It's just about deciding ahead of time what you're comfortable with so that you're not trying to figure it out on the fly under stress. And how this person responds when you share your situation and your preferences and your needs will tell you a lot about them as a person. So even though it might seem like a big awkward issue to navigate early on, it's actually a wonderful opportunity to see how they handle potential discomfort or potential differences in desires and behaviors. It's truly illuminating. And it's possible that your date might pressure you to drink. You should consider that as well. They might say, "Oh, come on, don't let me drink alone." Again, that's useful information to have about the other person. If they don't respect your boundaries or if they tease you about your choices, you don't owe anyone justification, but think ahead of time how you want to protect yourself in that moment. You might even think that you're disappointing them if you don't drink. But if you drink, will you be disappointing yourself? I'm going to suggest that you take responsibility for your own needs and your own emotions only. Make the choice that you know will feel good tomorrow morning too. And let your date manage their own emotions. It's not on you to manage their feelings. Next, let's talk about what it's like not to drink on a date when you're used to drinking on dates. Longtime listeners won't be surprised to hear me say that the important question to ask yourself is, if you do normally drink on dates, if that's what you used to do, what were you actually using the alcohol for? Was it to feel more confident? Was it because you think conversation will be easier if you're drinking? Was it because you tend to feel less self-conscious if you have a bit of a buzz? Do you think that you come off as more charming or funnier, or that it might be easier to get in the mood for physical intimacy if you're not fully sober? Once you understand what you believe the drink is doing for you, then you can start finding other ways to meet that need without actually drinking. Let's talk through some of the common benefits that we think alcohol is providing in the context of dating. The big one is alcohol reduces anxiety. And what alcohol actually does is it sedates you. It masks anxiety symptoms in the short term by flooding your system with feel-good chemicals. But that's not true relaxation. That is sedation. If you want to calm your nervous system down, there are other ways to do that that are actually more effective. For example, taking a few slow breaths with the exhale longer than the inhale will instantly help you feel calmer. It's so simple that we don't think it's going to do anything, but the science is there. Again and again, we have seen this. Deep breaths with a long exhale help to downregulate your nervous system. You can also try things like sighing audibly. It's exactly what it sounds like. You just make a big loud sigh. Ah. Or you can try humming. All of these things help to stimulate the vagus nerve, which is that information highway that connects the brain and the body. And when you activate the vagus nerve, it helps your body to calm down. Another way to release some anxiety is to focus on your physical senses. Get out of your thoughts that are making you feel anxious and instead drop into the body. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Doing this activates different parts of your brain and genuinely brings anxiety down because now you've given your brain a task and you've reduced the overactivation in the part of the brain where the anxiety was. Another common belief is that alcohol will make you feel more confident. Nope, it does not make you feel more confident. It's just masking the symptoms of whatever is standing in the way of genuine confidence. What is stopping you? What is stopping you from being fully and authentically yourself? That's confidence, when you feel good in your own skin and you're comfortable being who you are. And if you can't access that, it probably means you're judging yourself quite harshly and you're projecting that self-criticism onto others and worrying what they will think of you and whether they might be judging you. And when you drink, you might shut down that inner critic temporarily, but you're not actually doing anything to address the underlying problem that you are uncomfortable being yourself. Drinking to feel more confident is like taping over a crack in the window. You might temporarily stop the draft from coming in, but you still have a broken window underneath. Another common belief is that alcohol makes conversations easier. And yes, alcohol lowers inhibitions, which means you might feel less self-conscious, which means you might be more inclined to share. But alcohol doesn't magically create engaging conversations or shared interests where there are none. And plus, there's a fine line between being more chatty and spewing nonsense and repeating yourself. And there's a fine line between being expressive and just getting louder. Ask me how I know. I used to think I was funnier when I was drinking, but I think I used to just repeat myself and just get a little bit louder. And then there's the lie that alcohol makes the other person more attractive. Yes, okay, alcohol can make it easier to tolerate a date you're not enjoying, but that is worth questioning. The other person is who they are. Alcohol can't change them. If you have to drink to tolerate spending time with someone, is this really someone you want to be dating? My advice here is if you wouldn't do them sober, don't do them drunk. It's as simple as that. If you're feeling a bit bored or blah about your date, you might be tempted to think that that's because of the lack of alcohol. And it's true that alcohol elevates the positive hormones that can create almost a sense of euphoria. So, without alcohol, and especially if you're in the early days of not drinking, things can feel a little flat when you're not drinking. That's because your brain is so used to the high highs of alcohol, that huge hit of dopamine that you get when you drink. So the bar for what registers as pleasurable has been set quite high. So after you stop drinking, or if you're in the process of cutting back, it takes a while for your brain chemistry to adjust to the point that normal things feel pleasurable again. So if you're a little bored on your date, or you're not quite feeling the spark, it could be because you're not drinking, but it could also be that you're just not that excited about your date. Maybe you're really not into that person. You know what excitement feels like when it's genuine. You know that there are people and activities and delicious things in your life that you can very easily get excited about without a single drop of alcohol. And if you're not feeling all that excited about your date, it might just be the date, okay? Don't blame the lack of alcohol. And I want to take a moment here to normalize some awkwardness. First dates can be a bit awkward, period. The first time meeting any new person can be a bit awkward because you're trying to get to know them and read their expressions and body language. This is true in any context, but there is more at stake perhaps when you're on a date because you're evaluating if this is someone you might want to kiss or go home with or see again or spend your life with. There's a lot hanging on how the date goes. So it's normal that if all of that is running through your mind, the date can be a bit awkward. But what if that's okay? What if it's okay for things to be awkward sometimes? Welcome to being human. Being alive is awkward in itself, but being alive in close proximity to another person is even more awkward, especially if the whole time you're wondering if they like you and if you like them. Remind yourself that that's all normal. It's human. In fact, it would be more weird if there was no awkwardness. And it's good to remember that things could be awkward with another person, even if you were drinking. Another common belief is that alcohol helps you to loosen up for physical intimacy. First, notice if you're relying on alcohol to help you tolerate unwanted closeness because you're uncomfortable saying no or because you think you owe someone something. That's very different from wanting the physical intimacy with someone but feeling a little self-conscious. There's a lot more we can talk about here, and I will do a full episode at some point on sober sex. But for now, I want you to ask yourself, what am I actually comfortable with? And would I make this choice if I were sober? I'd be remiss if I don't remind you here that lowered inhibitions mean you're more likely to do things you might later regret, and you might not even remember them. And if you do want physical intimacy, but you need a little help to relax, there are other ways to get in the mood besides drinking. Finally, I also want to remind you that alcohol doesn't just numb anxiety or nervousness, it also numbs your senses, and therefore it numbs your ability to feel pleasure. You can check out episode 16, which is called When You Numb the Bad, You Numb the Good, where I talk in more detail about all of this. Alcohol can make physical intimacy less enjoyable. It can affect performance, make it hard to climax, and it can even leave you without clear memories of what exactly happened. So think about that when you make decisions about whether to go home with your date or what kind of intimacy to allow with them. And to lighten up things a little bit, I'm going to end this episode with some homework for you. I want you to think about how sober dating could actually be better than dating with alcohol. I will get you started with a few things off the top of my head, but I want you to add to this list. Make it your own. First of all, it's usually cheaper to have alcohol-free drinks than to drink alcohol. You're less likely to say something you'll regret. You probably won't get sloppy or slur your words or fall off your chair if you're drinking non-alcoholic drinks. You will also probably make safer choices. And this is a huge one, of course. Alcohol does lower your inhibitions, but there are two sides to this coin. It might make you a little less self-conscious, but it also impairs your critical thinking, which means you might make questionable decisions that put you and your safety at risk. And of course, if you're sober, you will remember everything the next morning instead of racking your brain trying to remember exactly what you said to your date. That's my list. What else is on your list? Write in and tell me. My email is in the show notes, and I would love to hear from you. And if you know someone who can benefit from this episode, maybe you have a sober curious friend who is newly single, share the link so they can listen as well. And if you've benefited from the podcast, please subscribe to it and take a minute to leave me a rating and a short review. This is what helps other listeners to find the podcast and to get the help that they're looking for. And if there's anything I can help you with, seriously, email me and let's talk. Even if my coaching is not a great fit for you at this time, I might be able to recommend other resources for the next steps on your journey. The consultations are absolutely free. We'll just chat and get to know each other. You can book yours via the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you have an amazing week, and I'll see you next time. If you're looking for practical advice for how to say no to alcohol and say yes to yourself, you will want to get on my email list. Sign up to receive my free guide with 7 steps to kickstart your sobriety. The link is in the show notes, so go and grab it now, and I'll see you soon in your inbox.